Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Objectively Bad Music Podcast. This is just my own little side thing, zero effort, zero editing, just me talking into my phone about ideas that I have. The reason that I want this to exist is because I work as a trainer at UPS, and I'm constantly talking my trainees' ears off about whatever musical escapade I'm on, and they could not care less. And the same goes for most of my other friends and family. They don't care about the new whatever hipster nonsense I'm listening to. They just want to throw on their, Certified Lover Boy and listen to some freaking Suicide Boys and be on with their day. So I thought I'd use this as a vessel to essentially vent my musical conversations to myself so that I can spare all those who don't care to listen and only have those few who do listen to this instead. So I thought I would establish something right off the bat. The whole podcast is named after this idea, so I thought it would only make sense for the first episode to talk about this, and that is objectivity in art. So I am under the unpopular opinion that art can be objectively quantified. I believe that you can objectively say if art piece number 1 is better than art piece number 2. Now, I'm not saying I have the qualifications for that, but I do think it is possible, and we're going to get into that today. So let's start with some clarification, of course. There is a common misuse of language in English that I hear all the time. You'll hear my co-host say it all the time. But I think there's a huge difference that people don't understand or realize or care, which is totally fine, and in which case you're probably not watching this video. But I think there's a huge difference between the terms "I don't like this" and "this sucks," or "I like this" and "this is good." I think the first one is just your statement of your subjective interpretation of it. You are subjectively interpreting that piece of artwork to be good, to be bad, to be crappy, to be the best, or I guess actually best wouldn't work, to be your favorite. There we go. Whereas when you're saying something like "this song sucks" or "this is the greatest band or album ever," you are not just stating your subjective interpretation. At that point, you are stating something that is in your mind a fact. You are saying that is, insert adjective here. So "this is bad" is not the same as "I don't like it." One is you stating something you perceive to be objective, and the other one is you stating something subjectively. So I think that's a very important clarification to make, and it is something that I hope to not mix up anymore as someone who does think that you can objectively quantify art and therefore thinks that there is a huge difference when someone says "is bad" or "I don't like it," So what is bad? Let's get into that. And how do you quantify? How do you judge that? So let's use this rather extreme example. If you were to go into an art museum, let's say you're a visual art critic, a physical art critic, so you like looking at real, tangible pieces of artwork. So you walk into this art museum. To your left is a one-to-one replica of the Sistine Chapel in all of its glory. It has all of the architectural pizzazz. It has all of the beautiful artwork. It is awe-inspiring. It is gorgeous. It is jaw-dropping. And then to your right, you have someone who has stapled or nailed a let's say a potato to the floor. If both artists' intention is to make you perceive the art as beautiful, then I feel like with this ridiculous example, it is very easy for you as an art critic, or even as a normal average person, to look at the Sistine Chapel and acknowledge, okay, this is the more beautiful piece of artwork. Now, intention makes all the difference, because if the artist's intention with the potato was to make you question the fabric of art itself, which is what a lot of like Dadaism art tries to do, then the potato art succeeded in its job. When you look at a lot of modern art, it isn't trying to be beautiful in the traditional way. It's trying to make you question the fabric of art itself, which it does. So if modern art is doing that, then in my opinion, that is a successful piece of artwork. So the potato, if that's the goal of the artist, is a good piece of artwork. It is just not good in the traditional sense of the word. Artist's intention is all of the difference. If a song is trying to make you cry and it makes you laugh because of how absurdly cringy it is and, goofy, edgy, that song is not doing a good job of relaying that emotion, of giving you the artist's intention. Whereas if the song is so emotionally potent that you can't help but have tears come to your eyes as you well up with feeling their emotions come through into you, then that song is doing an objectively good job of relaying the artist's emotion. Now, okay, that is not to say that whatever piece of artwork more people relate to is the piece of artwork that is the best. That is called a bandwagon fallacy, and I do not think that that is the case here. I do not think that whatever artwork the most people like is the objectively best artwork. Why? Because I think there is a sort of nuance that comes with being an art critic that the average person just doesn't really care to have, and that's totally, completely fine. Like, think of it like this, right? You have a zookeeper. A zookeeper has a bunch of zebras. When I see those zebras, I don't care about the nuances of the differences between the two of the handful of zebras. I just see, okay, that thing looks like a zebra. That's pretty cool. Oh, that one over there, that looks like a zebra. It's also pretty cool. But a zookeeper knows the intimate nuances between these zebras and can easily identify those characteristics in the zebra. I think it's the same thing with artwork. If you spend hours and hours of your day listening to all varieties of different music, all different decades, all different cultures, all different languages, all different genres, all different artists, you are probably more like the zookeeper, where you're able to pinpoint and look at all of these intimate little details about music that the average person just simply doesn't care to have. An art critic oftentimes can't enjoy a lot of music because they are looking past just how it sounds and how it makes you feel on the outside, and they're digging deeply into it. And there's obviously pros and cons to that. But that's why I think you can't try to use the bandwagon fallacy against my argument, because I think it has to be, the objective truth has to be ascertained by people who are knowledgeable in their field. I'm not saying I'm to that point. I'm not saying everything that I like is the objectively best or whatever. But if you're still not convinced, let's throw it into this thought experiment here. This has been something I used to bring up all the time, and it tends to work with most people, right? So let's get two art critics here. Art critic A, he thinks the Mona Lisa is the better piece of artwork. Art critic B thinks that Van Gogh's Starry, Starry Night is the better piece of artwork. So these two, they are skilled art critics. They've went to all different museums all across the world. They've been studying the form of paintings, or the form of artwork in the medium of artwork in the form of paintings for decades. They know thousands of paintings, hundreds of artists. They are very, very knowledgeable in their preferred medium of art, and they are also open-minded to the idea of being wrong. Now, that's a very, very important detail that I'll get into later as we discuss opinions. But, okay, now that we've established these two characters, let's say this. They spend 1 year each trying to prove to each other that their preferred piece of artwork is the better piece of art. They are, and with their free time, they are looking at the art pieces of artwork. They're both examining them. They are going over, in pretty good detail. They're going over all the little details of the art. They're getting a basic summary of the history of the art and the artist. And they, at the end of the year, They come back together and discuss what they found. Do you not think at the end of 1 year that both of these open-minded art critics would not be able to eventually come to a conclusion? Do you not think maybe Team Mona Lisa might be like, okay, you know what? I came to this thinking the Mona Lisa was better. But after observing this piece of artwork, I think that just the color palette and the ability for Van Gogh to express emotions in his artwork, in his art style, is just simply better than Mona Lisa. Or conversely, do you not think that the Starry Starry Night guy might not go, okay, look, I love Starry Starry Night. I think it's one of my favorite paintings, but the ability for Da Vinci to incorporate these beautiful small details into this canvas with the mischievous look of Mona Lisa, making you think about all these mysteries about what she's doing, what she's thinking, how she's feeling. The ability for this painting to transcend into her world is just something that Starry Starry Night cannot do. So, okay, I will give you the Mona Lisa is the better painting. After 1 year, do you not think one of them would eventually come to that conclusion? Well, okay. If not, let's amp it up a little bit. Let's do 10 years, a decade, a seventh of their entire life they spend going over so many details of this painting. They know these paintings better than they know their children. They know these paintings better than they know themselves. Well, okay, maybe not that far. But they know these paintings better than they know each other. Do you not think after 10 years, not one of them would eventually be like, okay, you know what? This painting is better. I came to it thinking this, but no, you know what? You're right. This painting is better, because they're both looking at this with an open-minded perspective. Still not convinced? Okay, now let's amp it up even more. 100 years. So now we're talking about something that is purely thought experiment. This is not actually possible at all. So 100 years. They literally do know these paintings better than they know themselves or anyone or anything else. 100 years they spend examining every brushstroke of these paintings. They know the history of the artists. They know almost everything there is to know about these paintings. Do you not think after 100 years, they would not eventually come to the conclusion of which one is the better piece of artwork? No? Okay, well, there's only one more thing I can amp it up to. Let's just go all the way. Infinite time. Infinite amount of time. Do you not think after an infinite amount of time, they now know these pieces of artwork to an atomic level? They know everything possible that there is to know about not only the artwork, but the artists and the culture that existed around that time. Everything about the history, everything about the region, everything there could possibly be to know about these two pieces of artwork. Any knowledge that exists, they have it, they know it. And do you not think at that point, at that extreme point, that they would not be able to say, okay, one of these paintings is objectively better than the other? After infinite time, we're talking hundreds of trillions of years, however long you think it may take, do you not think it is even possible? If you're still not convinced, the only thing I could do at this point is come up with the exact same metaphor, except replace Da Vinci with the Sistine Chapel and Starry Starry Night with the potato and the nail, given that both artists' intention is to create a beautiful piece of artwork. And at that point, okay, come on, you have to admit, right? You have to admit that that's possible? No? Well, okay, let's look at it a little more tangibly. Let's get back down onto earth. Let's get back down into reality here. So you give a 5-year-old a pencil and you tell him, okay, hey, draw your family. Draw the family to the best of your ability. Okay. He or she draws their family. And then you give a pencil to a artist who's specialized in hyperrealism for the past 20 years. You give them the pencil, you say the same thing. Hey, draw this child's family. Okay. Now you look at both pieces of art. One of them, is a squiggle of lines and circles and shapes and nonsense that you can barely tell is supposed to be a person or let alone a group of people. The other one is basically a 1-to-1 exact, perfect, photorealistic drawing of the family. Could you not, as an art critic, say, okay, the photorealistic artist's art is better? If the goal of both artists was to draw the family, one did a better job of that task. One did a better job, period. Sure, the family may actually all unanimously like the other drawing better, just because, they have, a child's drawing, especially if it's their own child's drawing, it has this innocence that's very wholesome. It's just lovable in its, badness, right? Because they're just barely understanding how to convert their ideas onto the pencil. So the entire family might like the little kid's drawing more, but if you'd ask them, okay, but which one is the better drawing of you guys? They're all going to admit, okay, it's obviously the adult's drawing. So that I would argue that is objectively true, that the hyper-realistic artist's drawing is better. Right? And now, as you can see, it's much easier to prove my case when I'm talking about extreme examples. We got a 5-year-old versus a professional photorealistic drawer or artist. We have the Sistine Chapel versus a potato on a nail. And those types of things, I think the average music critic or art critic can say, okay, this is objectively true. For example, okay, let's take it to music. Let's say Dark Side of the Moon. Okay, that is an objectively better album. Objectively better album than 6ix9ine's Gummo. Is that album he made? I believe I'm correct on that one. Gummo, maybe that's a song. Whatever album that song was on. I think an art critic or a serious music critic would say, yes, okay, Dark Side of the Moon is the better piece of music. Now, they might not prefer it. They might want to throw Gummo on and jam out at the club or at a party, but if you were to sit them down, they would admit, okay, Dark Side of the Moon is the better album. And I think that is such an uncontroversial opinion that I think you can objectively state things like that. And you probably are objectively right. But now when you get in, okay, but what's better, Dark Side of the Moon or Abbey Road? Now we have a conversation. And now that's when I don't know if anyone really has the qualifications to say for sure which is better. Just like with the Mona Lisa versus Starry Night, both of them are great pieces of artwork. Therefore, who knows how much time it will take to get down to the root of what is objectively better. Especially, it's especially difficult when the intention or the goal of the artists are not the same, because then you have to look at, okay, this song is supposed to make me sad and this other song is supposed to make me happy. Which song does its own goal better? And then that would be presumably the better piece of art. And while I'm not saying I have that ability, or you, or anyone else, I feel like as critics of art, we are slightly closer to that objective reality than your average person, and that's totally fine. Now let's get back into some crazy off-the-wall stuff, this time with a metaphor. This should prove to you that objectivity at least exists. Maybe I don't know what it is, and maybe it is truly impossible for a human to know what it is. But let's get into this metaphor here. So let's say an artist is a flashlight or a laser, right? The laser is shooting a color at a group of color receptors. Now, it is objectively true that the laser is shining, let's say, blue, right? That is objectively true. Let's say now to the metaphor that the laser is the artist and the beam, the color, is the intention, the emotion. Let's go with sadness, since I said the color was blue. Now, the subjectivity is now the colors that the color reflectors, or whatever I said earlier, that's the color that they showcase back. So if you point this blue laser at the color receptors and they all turn different colors, some are blue, some are purple, some are yellow, that means the laser is not doing a good job of transmitting a clear color signal. It is doing an objectively bad job of that. But if the laser shoots at these color receptors and they all turn various shades of blue, then that laser did a better job of reflecting its color onto these receivers. Now, the receivers are the people, are the critics. The laser, once again, is the artist, and the beam is the art and the intention behind the art. That it is objectively true that beam is a specific color. The subjectivity is the color that you perceive it as, the color that you are reflecting, right? So I didn't come up with that metaphor, and it is pretty off the walls, but I think it paints a pretty clear picture, and it's a pretty cool, interesting way to look at it. Objectively speaking, there is a color coming off, and we all can acknowledge that. Whether or not our receptors are able to pick up on that color, well, that's what we're trying to figure out here. So what I think is the wrong thing to do with this information is to then continue living life just saying, well, that's just my opinion. Because what I think that does is it stops you from having really engaging, interesting conversations and reflecting on your own thoughts in a way that might actually bring new light into your thought process. If someone tells me, that album actually is not that great, I'm like, well, I like it, and that's just my opinion. I'm not then going to be able to have an engaging conversation with them and be like, okay, how come? And have that open-minded dialogue like the two art critics from my earlier thought experiment are able to have. And maybe after some talking, they might actually convince me, you know what, actually this album is not that great. And this other album that I like is actually a lot better than I remember, because I'm re-examining my thoughts with an open mind and coming to new conclusions. I think that is a very healthy thing to do and a very fun thing to do. And if you just live your life saying, that's just my opinion, I think you are missing out on experiencing a lot of new ideas, a lot of new thoughts, and maybe changing your perception for the better. So yeah, try not, even if you don't agree that there is some objective reality behind art, at least try to work on that. Try not to just cop out with, this is just my opinion, because I think that kind of ruins music dialogue and art dialogue as well. That might be the reason I'm so passionate about this objectivity thing, is just because I just find it so uninteresting to have conversations when people are just like, what is the word I'm looking for? They just kind of dismiss the idea that they could be wrong about art because they just think of it as subjective, when I think there is an objective truth behind it. Like, if, let's say, God exists. If you were to ask God, who is supposedly omnipotent, all-knowing, if you were to ask God, yo, what's better, Dark Side of the Moon or Abbey Road? I think God himself would know the objective truth. I don't think God would be like, well, it's just actually up to your opinion. Like, no. Like, if there is objective truth, I mean, I believe there is objective truth, and if something is all-knowing, they would have to know what piece of art is better. I just don't think that could possibly be an opinion. How much we like something is an opinion, but how good something is, that is a whole different conversation. So at the end of the day, with all that said, go out there, crack some albums open, go watch some movies, play some video games, look at some artwork, engage with art, maybe even make some art yourself. Write up a little song, play a little bit of guitar, draw a little doodle, do your thing, and at the end of the day, it probably will objectively suck, but that's part of the fun. So you do your thing, I'll be over here criticizing it, believing that I'm objectively right, even though I'm probably the furthest from that. And yeah, that's it from me. You just spent, God knows how long this was, half an hour listening to some dork ramble about how he's objectively wrong about everything. And I hope you enjoyed. I'll have much more where that came from, and hopefully it's a little more about just whatever albums I'm listening to or whatever in the future, rather than this philosophical, thought-provoking, nonsense about objectivity and yada yada. I just thought I'd have to get out of the way because the whole podcast is named after this concept, and you'll see it brought up a lot in the podcast, the way I engage with music and the way I think about music. So I thought it'd be good to lay down these basic ground rules on how I think. And I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I'm hoping with all the thought experiments and the metaphors, I'm hoping that maybe, just maybe I change a couple people's mind. So that's all I have to say. And I hope you got something out of this. And I hope you keep making crappy art, because why not? God bless.